Have you ever had that feeling, that strange sense of distance, like you're just watching your own life from behind a sheet of glass? It's something so many of us feel in our crazy busy lives. So today, we're going to break down that feeling of disconnection and really explore how we can tackle it, not by accident, but with clear, focused intention.
And you should know, this feeling isn't just in your head. It's a real, totally human experience. It's that sense of isolation that can make you feel distant from everyone around you, and sometimes maybe even a little distant from who you really are. You know that quiet loneliness that can creep in even when you're in a room full of people? Yeah, that's it.
And that right there is the key word for everything we're talking about today, intentionally. See, we usually just wait for connection to kind of happen to us. But what if we could actually build it? What if there was a clear, structured way to close that gap? Well, there is, and we're about to walk through it together.
Okay, so first things first, let's get a really clear picture of what this feeling of disconnection actually is. Because you can't really solve a problem until you truly understand what you're up against, right? So this feeling, it tends to show up in three main areas. We can feel disconnected from other people, which, leads to loneliness. We can feel disconnected from ourselves, losing touch with what we actually want and need. And we can feel disconnected from our sense of direction, just feeling totally lost or adrift. And this isn't just a mood, it has real physical consequences. It messes with our sleep, it dials up our anxiety, and it just pours fuel on our stress.
So, we've laid out the problem. Now let's get to the good part, the solution. And this isn't about some vague, fluffy advice. We're talking about a concrete framework for building what the source material calls intentional wellness.
The whole idea is built around these 4 pillars of happiness. That's our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual energy. And the key that unlocks all of them is mindfulness. And listen, this isn't about sitting perfectly still for an hour trying to empty your mind. Nope. It's about using focused awareness to intentionally fire up these energies and actively, purposefully build a life of connection.
Okay, but to use these tools right, we first have to understand what's happening inside our own heads. Like, why do we feel so disconnected in the first place? Well, a lot of the time, it all starts with the invisible stories that we tell ourselves.
You see, disconnection really takes hold and grows thanks to 2 mental habits, interpretation and rumination. Here's how it works. We take something that happened, a totally neutral event. We interpret it through a personal and usually pretty negative filter. And then, we ruminate on it. We just play it over and over and over in our minds, digging that negative story deeper and deeper.
And you can see this so clearly in a simple everyday example. The fact is, they didn't message me. Simple. But the story we create is, so they don't care. That tiny little word, so, that's where the disconnection starts. We've just built an entire story about rejection from a single fact. And in the process, we've built a wall between us and them.
And this whole habit is fueled by other invisible forces, right? That little inner critic who just loves negative self-talk. The endless doom scrolling on social media that just breeds comparison. The crushing weight of our own high expectations. And of course, that constant fear of what other people might be thinking. Do any of those sound a little familiar?
And all of it can get boiled down to one incredibly powerful and frankly, incredibly damaging core belief. I am the problem. When that becomes a story we tell ourselves, it's the ultimate barrier. I mean, how can you possibly connect with anyone else if you fundamentally believe that you're the reason for the disconnection in the first place?
All right, so we've looked at the inner workings of disconnection. Now let's get practical. Let's start building our toolkit with some simple but really powerful practices that can pull us back into the present moment, which, by the way, is the only place connection can actually happen.
So first and foremost, what mindfulness really does is it just helps you notice. It's like flipping on a light in a dark room. You're not trying to judge the feeling or push it away. You're just acknowledging it. Ah, there's anxiety. Or, okay, that's sadness. Just seeing it is always the first step.
And once you can see that thought or feeling, you can interrupt that whole rumination cycle we were talking about. You can actually catch yourself going down that negative rabbit hole and choose to step off the hamster wheel instead of just letting it spin out of control.
And this leads to something huge. You become less reactive. By creating just a tiny bit of space, a little pause between a feeling and how you react to it, you give yourself the power of choice. You're not just automatically lashing out anymore. You're consciously responding. And this, right here, this is the ultimate goal. When you're more aware, when you're less caught up in those negative thought loops, and you're less reactive, you create the perfect internal environment for genuine connection to actually grow.
both with yourself and with other people.
So what does this actually look like in practice? It can be so simple. Before you snap back in a tense conversation, just take 5 slow, deep breaths. When your mind feels like a tangled mess, grab a notebook and just write for 5 minutes. No filter, no judgment. These aren't huge commitments. They're tiny little anchors you can use throughout your day.
And hey, don't forget the power of your body. When you feel that low mood starting to creep in, especially if you've been sitting around all day, one of the best things you can do is just move. A simple 10-minute walk can completely shift your physical and your mental energy. It's amazing.
Now, these tools are great on their own, but their real power gets unlocked when we start applying them to the challenges of our actual real lives. You know, things like our relationships and how we use technology.
When you think about your relationships, remember the goal isn't more friends, it's more presence. So instead of just letting a conversation skim the surface, try this simple action. Just ask one more genuine question. And with technology, notice when scrolling is just making you feel bad and leading to comparison. The action? Create a small boundary. No phone for the first 30 minutes of your day or the last 30 minutes before bed. See what happens.
Okay, for our final section, let's bring all of this home. Because understanding these ideas is great, but the real change, the real transformation, that only happens when we actually put them into action.
And as you start, it is so crucial to be patient with yourself. Your brain is going to come up with all the excuses. If you think, "Oh, this isn't working," just remind yourself, new habits take time. If you think, "I actually feel worse now," that's a great sign. It just means you're finally noticing the feelings that were already there. And if you think, "I just don't have time for this," start smaller. 2 minutes is 1,000 times better than 0 minutes.
You know, this right here, this is the real turning point. For so long, our instinct is to avoid that feeling of disconnection, to numb it out or distract ourselves. The real shift happens when we stop running away from it and we start observing it, when we get curious about the feeling instead of being afraid of it. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important takeaway. You can't think your way into feeling more connected. You can't just sit around and wait for it to magically show up. Connection is a result. It is born from the small, intentional actions you take day in and day out. So the only question left is, what small action are you going to take today?